Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy says she told the Acolyte creator, "You've written a great Star Wars show. Now go write a Leslye Headland show." What? What would that even... Well, anyway, this story comes to us from Spencer Bakuli, and thankfully he found out just what Kathleen Kennedy meant by this. So she said, Kennedy then revealed her faith in Headland storytelling was inspired by her play Cult of Love, the drama piece that centers on a Christian family whose relationship with both each other and God begin to unravel during one particularly rough Christmas gathering, and in particular, its thematic dissection of sibling bonds. It's about her personal experience, and it was just so well done and incredibly emotional. I remember reading that and saying, Leslye, this is exactly what you should tap into as you write the story for us. That's what Kathleen Kennedy sounds like in my mind. I don't care what she sounds like in real life. She sounds like that annoying cloud princess, space princess, something like that from Adventure Time. Oh my glob. Yeah, she sounds like that in my mind. But, Leslye took that in stride, and she had this to say about what Kathleen liked about her writing. She says, I have a very strained relationship with my youngest sister, and I feel like one of the reasons it is strained is that we both see each other as the bad guy. And if I was going to tell a story about bad guys, it seemed to me like the place to start should be a familial relationship where one person is convinced of her correctness and the other person, who might also be female, is also adamantly convinced of her correctness. Briefly speaking on her own thoughts, the show's direction rather, the star Amandla Stenberg added, Leslye is really driven by emotion, heart, and relationships. So even though our show is within the Star Wars universe and set in outer space, whatever that is, in a galaxy far, far away, it's really a family drama. Aren't you excited about the family drama of Star Wars? I know that, that's what brought everybody to the theater, like the family drama. I'm sorry, it's just, I can't help it. I gotta talk like an airhead in order to make any sense of this. Think about that for a minute. I get that the thematic elements of Star Wars is a son correcting the sins of the father, Ultimately, that's what you're looking at, is a father who's created so much ill will, and then the son redeeming him through his own heroic actions, in fact, fighting the father. It's a thematic element of old-timey fantasy. The son rising into his own prominence usually involves overcoming the ego of his father. As a guy out there, for gals, this might be a little different, but every now and then, as a young fella, you'd find yourself butting heads with your father. This is that kind of blown out of proportion, right? But that wasn't the central effect of Star Wars. It wasn't the central juiciness of Star Wars. If anything, it was just sort of like I don't know, maybe like the spice in the cake, maybe. That was it. The frosting, what got you sat down. I'm using all this cake metaphor because I haven't had lunch yet. Sorry, my bad. But if you're hungry, if you're on a diet, you're screwed, okay? There's going to be more food metaphors. But anyway, it's like the frosting on the cake, the tastiness of the cake, the candles, whatever you have, that's what brought people to the table. And that was, of course, the space combat. That was the war element. That was the good versus evil overtones. That was the blatantly obvious young guy defeats a space empire themes of Star Wars. That's why the first movie had this kid acing a giant space battleship from hell. Space hell. So that, you've got this, through a vent, by the way, right? A vent, okay? Now they're sitting here and telling us, well, now it's a family drama. Now it's a CBS primetime show about somebody cheating on somebody else, but there's lightsabers and parkour involved now. Goody. I heard earlier today that Jay was saying this over on Geeks and Gamers. He says, it's almost like somebody gave a bunch of women a blank check and they just went to town on it. Well, how about that? It just certainly seems like that. That, again, I have to remind you guys of way back during Star Wars Celebration last year, that they were so excited that they had hired people into the franchise to write, direct, create, that had no footing in the Star Wars franchise whatsoever, as fans, as tech workers, as any other thing. They had no footprint in it whatsoever. Okay? That should alarm anybody involved in this production. But the thing is, and I have to harp on this, it's because they don't want to pay royalties. This is what they're doing. All of this is in service of making sure they don't have to pay royalties. The message, of course, is injected into everything, like the corn syrup you find in food today. There's some more food metaphors, I told you. It's like corn syrup and everything. It's horrible for you. You shouldn't be consuming it, but they put it in everything anyway. That's the message. That's what they keep stuffing into this, right? Well, in order to wrap that message in something they can pound into your head day after day, they have to put it in something attractive like Star Wars that's interesting and a pop culture landmark, if you will. The trouble is Star Wars has a gigantic pantheon of stories to tell, a huge library that at one point was delegitimized and may have been re-legitimized. Not quite sure on that one. In any case, in order to avoid having to pay royalties, Disney hires these wackadoodles like Leslye Headland to go out there and create this, I don't know, Seventh Heaven meets Star Wars stuff in order to avoid having to pay royalties for the actual stories that you and I want to see. We're thankful we're getting the Thrawn trilogy, but are we really getting the Thrawn trilogy? It doesn't seem like we're going to get Thrawn. We're going to get like a low energy, even more low energy Elon Musk in space, is what it seems to be, with zombie space troopers. Woohoo! And I say space trooper because there's not even stormtroopers anymore. They're just these generic bad guys that wear white helmets. That's all you've got. There's no, sometimes they're red even. Sometimes they wear black armor. Sometimes they're blue. I don't even know. It's whatever the Empire wants to paint them this week, or whatever, whoever has control of these guys. There's been such a loss in the branding and identity of Star Wars, and it's really on purpose. See, I'm a Power Ranger fan, and I just noticed this recently, that this is what Hasbro did. They dismantled the franchise to the point where it's not recognizable, even to children. And this is what Star Wars has done. Disney has become so obsessed with compartmentalizing and fan fictioning these tiny little pixels of the Star Wars universe in order to avoid paying royalties to the actual talent that made it the franchise worth those many billions of dollars, right? But in all of this, you might be wondering, just what the hell is a Leslye Headland show going to be about? Well, thanks to the Mary Sue of all places, we have somewhat of an answer of where her mind is right now as she's crafting this grand journey, as she's executing it for television. You see, the Acolyte getting ready to go. And so they say this here at the headline of Mary Sue. And this is in true Mary Sue fashion. Don't be surprised by this headline. It's not sarcastic. This person is being 1000% honest with this headline. And it reads, racist Star Wars fans can't handle the Acolyte creator speaking the truth. Yeah. Rachel Leishman wrote that. Well, maybe not a real human being, but somebody told an AI or wrote that themselves, that actual headline. Yeah. Somebody who pays taxes and votes wrote that. You know that, right? Think about that for a minute, okay? So here we go. Let's just get into the meat of it. We don't need this setup. She's having some stupid conversation about their stupid politics. Let's just get into the meat of it. So she says, as a fan myself, I know how frustrating some Star Wars storytelling in the past has been. I've felt it myself. I stand by my empathy for Star Wars fans, but I want to be clear. Let me be clear. Anyone who engages in bigotry, racism, or hate speech, I don't consider a fan. Okay? So think about that for a second, okay? Just consider the ramifications of that statement alone. So we don't even know what she considers hate speech. We know not using pronouns is considered hate speech to people. We know that not letting children drastically mutilate their bodies is considered hate speech to people. We know that making commentary on what happened in 2020 with the George Floyd riots result in people declaring hate speech. So what exactly is she talking about here? This is the problem we run into, is that quite obviously Leslye Headland's mind, when crafting the Acolyte, was focused on revenge. Not revenge for the light on the dark side, not revenge for any rebel begrudged by the Empire. No. No, this is her own private problem she has with her family that she's decided to invite millions of people into. When you're a writer and you go out creating stories, it's important not to inject your entire self into it. I'll give you an example. Tolkien went through a war. Some argue that he based his experience on World War I. Some argue it based on what happened in World War II. Either way, the man actually served in war, saw combat, and saw horrible things associated with war. Okay? That actually happened. Now, he based that experience, what he witnessed, what he felt, who the gods he turned to, the God he turned to, you know? This is what he based that into. He built that into his world. It would have been very easy to tell a story about a bunch of soldiers trouncing some Germanic dickhead. Very easy. However, instead of doing that, he built up this flaming eyeball that's the manifestation of all evil. He built up this one ring to control everyone that becomes symbolic of almost every political party that seizes too much power, right? And somehow, even today, the messages in the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit stories, even the Silmarillion, as fractured as it is, ring true to the experiences you and I, as humans born many years after Tolkien's demise, are still living. We are still living the story told in Lord of the Rings. That's not to say that humanity is cyclical, that it is repeating as George Lucas does with his stories, right? But these are the elements. These are the things that you and I experience in life that get translated into a story that become relatable to people. I'm never going to climb into a 1980s DeLorean and travel back in time. That's not going to happen. Partly because the flux capacitor isn't real and I don't feel like bonking my head off the toilet to find out if I'm the guy who figures it out, okay? But the other reason is the fact that that's not a real thing that happened. No one translated traveling through time into this. They translated their experience as a young person wishing to change the future and having the opportunity to do so. Learning along the way that it's kind of inappropriate to change too much, but okay to change just enough to improve the future without dramatically changing the outcome of all events. And see, that's what's important to all of this, is that when you put your own experiences, your own expectations of the world in your storytelling, that's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be you. It's not supposed to be you fighting with your sister. It's not supposed to be you having family trouble at Christmas time. It's not supposed to be you questioning your place with God. If those are themes you want to use, certainly. But don't sit there and start putting your family photo album into the freaking Star Wars franchise. This isn't how you build anything that lasts. We learned this from Stan Lee. He told us a very long time ago, I believe it was in the 80s, he did an interview with one of the big magazines, and he was explaining the concept of timeless truths. Now, I can't rattle them off the top of my head just right now, but they were basically, the guy gets the girl, evil is always defeated, children are innocent, and women and children deserve a chance to survive. You know, the sent them first. You know, and the monster is always the representation of evil, that kind of thing. These are timeless truths. And this is the thing that Stan was relying on when he was telling us this stuff, and that's what translated into Marvel's success. Then we hear that George Lucas at the Cannes Festival recently is explaining that Star Wars can't have these sexist elements to it. It can't have these misogynist, racist, bigotry elements to it. It's a universe full of different aliens and races and creeds and gods and all these different things, these different political backgrounds. It's not just the Empire versus the rebels. We saw this in the very beginning with, well, the very beginning of the story, if you will, with the prequel installment. It had nothing to do with the Empire. There were hundreds of different political parties working together or against one another going on here. Different races. We saw E.T., for goodness sake, being part of the Galactic Senate. You're going to sit here and tell me that Star Wars is about racism when 3 out of the 6-member main cast aren't even recognizably human? One of them's a trash can that whistles. I don't understand where this mentality of inserting today's politics in, because Stan told us Timeless truths are what last. When you insert politics of today into your works, they age as fast as the headlines they were born out of. Just like Headland's talk of hate speech and bigotry and racism are continuing to compound and hammer the situation with DEI and all this different politics that are bleeding into cinema for the past, I don't know, 25 years now. It's not getting any better now. The Acolyte may be, in fact, the pinnacle of the problem. And I'm not kidding. We've seen Furiosa just go overboard. We've seen now Agatha, all things are belonging to Agatha or whatever, that the witch with a wardrobe, or it was Agatha all along or something like that. I don't know. The 17th different title for this to come out again. These are all about revenge. These are all about either taking out personal gripes on people through fan fiction using multi-million-dollar properties, or they're about getting political revenge on people using multi-million-dollar franchises. I'm not surprised, you shouldn't be either, but I just wanted to remind you that you're not a fan if you're engaging in whatever she defines as hate speech, whatever she defines as racism, whatever she defines as bigotry. She came out and spoke out about the Florida school bill. Well, guess what? That means you're a bigot and you're racist and you're part of hate speech if you don't agree with putting that stuff in schools for children to consume. I don't feel that way. I don't feel like I hate anybody if I want to make sure that that stuff's not in schools. I don't know about you, but she knows, that's for sure. So remember that. When your friends say, we should check out The Acolyte. Oh, this is so cool. It's a musical number in a Star Wars show. We've got to talk about this, that kind of... No. No. The loudest thing you can do with Disney's Acolyte is be silent on what you have opinions about it after it comes out. That's the loudest thing we can do, is to not watch it, to not tell people to watch it, not even for the sake of capturing memes. If you want to go steal something or whatever to make a meme, pass. Let it sink into the abyss of forgotten internet crap. Think about this for an instance, right? So much has happened in the several million years a humanity has walked the earth. How many things have been forgotten simply because nobody talks about them today? Yeah. How many things have been forgotten that you haven't heard about in forever, were pretty big and influential things, but just have been generally forgotten by the populace because it's just not talked about? So let's do that to Acolyte. Let's make sure that it doesn't survive its launch day. Let it go out with a whimper, if you will. But I'll see you in the next video, and until then, good luck out there.